from Athens, a Disney vacation, and then we get to angelic messages and Grace Church.
That is literally the open tabs on my Safari browser. So yeah, that's me.
That's spectacular.
Hey y'all, hey, welcome. It's another episode of the Sacred and Profane Podcast with your favorite embodied goddess, is Neftara. I'm here, but I'm not alone for this conversation because this conversation is it's legit. It's legit. I've got my number one, my ride or die, Clay E. Freemaze here. Just so you know, tonight's conversation is such a big deal. It's such a big deal that we needed a white man and a black woman to carry this one. You guys got that? So you get one of each. Let's pull some rooms out and see what we're gonna see the containers is gonna be, because we're going deep. We're not even gonna mess around. Oh wow. Oh yeah. Oh, of course. Okay, my lovelies. We've had Issa Ice. Issa Ice is like, all right, so some people think of it as like the stillness or like a call to meditation. In this case, we're going to go with cosmic coherence. I feel that. This conversation is definitely that. Dagaz for intuition and the light within. Dagaz is the dawn. And for the last rune, we have Thurisaz or Thor, protection and regeneration. I really feel that because I feel like I lit some sage before I pressed record. This conversation is pretty intense, and I think it's very provocative, but that's what we do on this podcast. And so I feel like a little protection is definitely needed. So earlier today, I was doing this reel for Instagram, and what came through, you guys know, everything's intuition. I'm like, what are we going to talk about? It was like, there's something about it being an election year and the chosen, right? The 144,000. I'm not actually going to get into the election. I'm not actually going to get into the chosen, right? I am going to say that there's some type of cosmic coherence there. There's some type of intersectionality occurring. I'm going to keep my eye on it. But this is a perfect time to remind you that this and all episodes of this podcast are adult only. If you are not 18 years of age or older, please press stop, walk out of the room, close your ears, close your eyes, whatever it is you need to do. If you are an adult, then dial your emotional maturity up, because I don't think there's a part of this conversation that's not going to trigger you. And yeah, everything that you're about to hear, you're going to be triggered. So there you go. I think we covered it. I think we covered that. Apologies for my technical difficulties. I'm actually looking for a charger for my device. But to get started, right, to jump in, I'm gonna put this out there, and I'm not even gonna back away from it. We're in a really pivotal time of human history, and I'm watching a lot of people flail and suffer and digress. Can I call it digression? I think I can. And I'm not blaming the church. I'm just saying they're highly responsible for it. I was just saying to Clay here, I believe that Christianity in its purest form is radical. It's radical. It's like it was always intended to be radical. If you believe in God, the universe, ancestors, whatever you subscribe to, whatever words you choose, it's radical. Christianity, one, originally wasn't called Christianity, right? The people who believed that they were followers of the way, but it was such an interruption to the status quo of its time. It was such a call to live outside of the box, to live outside of the rules, to live beyond what was being perpetrated as reality. I mean, if you have read the Bible, even if you haven't, and I say this as someone who was raised, in Christianity, the Bible is fantastical. It's fantastical. Like really, 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 it's fantastical, right? So this woman got pregnant out of nowhere, and she convinced her fiance that it was okay. She wasn't a hoe. And he was like, okay, I believe you. And then they ended up traveling out of town for census and to pay their taxes. And she went into labor on the way. And then they had this baby in a barn. And angels showed up and sang. And then these rich people from another country followed a star astrologically. They used astrology to find this baby that was born in the barn in the middle of nowhere. This is fantastical, right? And I'm just giving you the biblical version. Just the biblical. I'm not going to add any. Just the biblical version. And then they live, in the Middle East, and then they move to Egypt for a while, and then they come back. And by the time this kid, Yeshua, Jesus, was 12, he was like so smart. He was up in church debating the pastors in the church. Like, whoa, okay, can your 12-year-old do that? Okay. And then, by the way, this whole time, because culturally that's what they did, he was also apprenticing with his dad, Joseph. His dad was a carpenter. So he was apprenticing with his dad to be a carpenter. But yeah, when he was 30, he's like, you know what? I'm actually a God in living flesh. Yeah, I'm a living God. And I have a God who's in heaven. And did you know the kingdom of heaven is at hand? And I'm going to do some really cool shit. Like, I'm not going to work. I'm not going to work. Do you know culturally that was like insane for a man to not work? You just don't do that in that culture back then. That is not what you do. So not only did he not work, he's like, you know what? I need some homies to roll with me. He went and got 12 more men to stop working and follow him around. It's fantastic. It's a fantastical story. And he did fantastical things. He turned water into wine. He walked on water. You guys know. He fed like thousands of people with a couple loaves of bread and some fish. I mean, holy crapola. This is a radical belief system. And somehow, in modern times, it has become synonymous with ultra-conservatism. Make this make sense. It's not adding up to me. I personally am disturbed by the number of people who believe that they are in alignment with Christ-like behavior when they spew hate, when they judge their neighbors. I mean, I could go on and on and on. But here we are in 2024, a year of karma. And might I add, instant karma. I mean, it's like you spit in the air, it lands in your face instantly. And people are suffering. Jobs are failing, economies are failing, marriages are failing. I mean, oh my gosh, sending your kid to school it's scary. The world has become this really scary place. And I don't think it's new. I think the world has always been scary. I just think that we are more aware than we have been. And, over, a few thousand years, the church has held itself out to be a safe space. A space where people can come and, connect and grow. At least that's what I remember from my church growing up. Those words were on the wall. Come, connect, grow. But that's not what happens. Maybe for some people, but for the vast majority of us, that's not what happened when we attended church. There's this big movement in Christianity right now called deconstruction, where Christians are leaving church and deconstructing Christianity, not their faith. I've met a number of Christians out and about in the world who are going through deconstruction. They still believe in God. They love God. They just don't go to church. And I think it's important that we really chop that up. And also, when it comes time for judgment, right? You guys, I read Tarot. When the judgment card comes sliding out of the deck, the church really, I say, has to be at the front of the line. I don't know if you guys remember church history, but there was a time when the Catholic Church was selling salvation, right? Like you could pay a few thousand gold coins and you get a certificate saying you were definitely going to heaven. I can't tell that we stopped doing that as a church. I feel like the church, the modern church, is still selling salvation. Only now, if you're a mega church, you've got an ATM in your lobby, so it's not bring a few thousand coins. Just make sure you tithe every week. Make sure you keep the offering bucket full, and that means you're a good Christian, and then you're going to go to heaven. You know, the challenge there is that's not how it works. That's not how it works. You can't buy your way into heaven. If you could, lots of people would have done it by now. And just if you believe in Jesus, if you say, you know what, I like that Jesus fellow. I'm gonna do what he says. What he said was you have to love people and then love God, but really love people like yourself. So yeah, Jesus was into love and peace, and I was reminded the other day that there was only one sermon that Jesus gave. It was the Sermon on the Mount, where he talked about the first being last and last being first. And somehow that's been forgotten in modern Christianity. I have compassion for humanity right now as we go through one of the most difficult times on this planet that we've ever been present to in our recorded history. Nothing is as it was. Nothing is as it seems. On a daily basis, we're discovering that what we thought was true is not true, and who we thought we could trust, we absolutely cannot trust. And in my humble opinion, what makes this very, very difficult for all of us is there is seemingly no place to turn. Now, that's not true, but for the sake of this conversation, there's no place outside of us we can go collectively as a group for comfort, for solace, for peace. If you go to the church, there's division, there's dissension, there's factions, there's denominations, there's arguments. And I will say it because this is my space and I get to say it. There's too much fucking politics in church. Way too much politics in church. It's disgusting. Now, of course, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know that this is all perfect. It's on purpose because right now we're all supposed to be turning inward to do our shadow work, to connect to our intuition, to connect to the Holy Spirit that indwells us, that's dwelling within us. And that being said, there is a great migration happening, right? There is this mass awakening happening that is fueling this deconstruction. A lot of us are being called out of church, and yet I'm watching so many people panic in the streets. Shout out to Panic at the Disco lovers. Panic in the streets, and they're running to church like, oh my God, this is where I'm going to get peace. But there's no peace in church. What's that word? It's a placebo. Church is a placebo. And I, for one, am tired of watching people swallow pills that are going to do absolutely nothing for them. So Clay and I grew up in a really similar type family. We both went to church when the doors were open. We went to Christian school when we were younger. And I don't know that we had the same experience, but we had a similar enough experience that when we met, this conversation was something that we talked about, and we still talk about ongoingly. And it's brilliant because we have our unique perspectives, right? Black woman from the South was a white guy who was raised in New England. Very different worlds, and yet, the ties that bind: church, Christianity. I was having a moment this summer. I was talking with my guides, and I was, sneak peek into my shadow work, pieces of it. I was having this conversation with my guides, like they were asking me what do I see as a block to my manifestation, right? I've done a lot of work around manifesting. I consider myself a master manifester. And if you are into manifestation, you know there's always east to go. You're never like, I did it, yay, I arrived, I got it. There's always manifesting faster, manifesting more pristinely. Like really have your manifestations show up the way you intend them to. So I'm talking to my guides and they're like, what do you see? What do you see is in the way? And no cap, I was like, I don't know, I can't see. Because I've found that if you can't be honest with your guides, you have a problem. So my guide said, do you see where your experience in church is negatively impacting your ability to manifest? Straight up, that's what they asked me. I was standing up and I sat down like, holy shit, that was a whole fucking sentence. I don't know about you guys. Sometimes when I talk to my guys, it's like one or two words, like blah, 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 blah. You know, like, no. An entire fucking sentence. So I was like, ooh, let me sit down with that. And then I sat down. I had a seat. And I had to sit there and get quiet. And I went back through my childhood, right? Like, my experience at church. I'll tell you what I saw. So I went to a non-denominational, multi-ethnic church. And it is a mega church, so I'm not going to name it because it is still very much a mega church, alive and well. And this church really prided, and I believe, I don't attend anymore, but I believe they do still pride themselves on being a church of the nations. And so what I mean by that is when you walk into the foyer of my home church, there would be like, I don't know, I think at the time there was like 26 or 30 flags from around the world representing where the different members of the congregation were from. And at my home church, it was very encouraged for you to wear your cultural dress. So on any given Sunday, you walk up into this church, not only do you walk into like the United Nations of flags, okay, but you look around and it's mega church, so auditorium. You got to get that auditorium, right? So you walk through the doors, you go into the foyer and it's really big, and there's a bookstore and a cafe. But then you go through the doors of the sanctuary and it is stadium seating, my friend, okay? Because it's a mega church. And you look down and you're like, oh my God, you can see the nations represented because people are wearing their cultural gear. It was beautiful. Beautiful. If you can imagine this. Beautiful. The average church has 50 members on Sunday morning. And they're typically one race. So credit where credit is due. That's not where I went to church. I went to church at the United Nations. Where there was several thousand people from all over the world and everyone was proud. We had translations. We had sign language for the hearing impaired. I mean, if you wanted to go to church, you could go here, really. So that's really where my intuition led me, was how diverse this church was. And I'm really just sitting here following the leading of my guides, like, okay, well, do I see where my church experience negatively influenced my manifestation? And then it's like in my mind's eye, I began replaying different church services from over the years where people stand up and give testimony. So if you've been to church, you know what I mean, stand up and give testimony. If you haven't been to church or you went to a different kind of church, standing up and giving testimony is when, the pastor or the person on stage says, okay, who wants to tell about the goodness of the Lord? Like, who has a testimony, right? And then people raise their hand and they get called up to the stage to share about all the good things that God has done in their life. And then everybody acknowledges them and praises them, and it's awesome. So I do this in my own life. I'll call it bragging. And I love to brag on myself and all the things that, my guides have led me to do that have worked out for me. So wonderful practice, beautiful practice, nothing against the practice. In my childhood home church, what I saw was white men would stand up and they would give testimony about how God blessed them with a promotion on their job, or God blessed them with a new job that paid more with a raise. God blessed them with a great deal in their new home. God blessed them with a new car. It was usually a Lexus, just saying. And it was great. I saw white women stand up and give testimony about how God blessed them with a husband who was a loving husband, a God-fearing husband, and how excited they were to get married to this wonderful God-fearing man. And that was awesome. I saw black women stand up and give testimony about how God gave them strength and courage and peace to get through a difficult time with their family, about how so-and-so in their family may have had some problems with the law, but thank God they were able to get an attorney and it worked out. You guys, I'm just telling you what I saw as a kid, okay? I can feel you getting triggered. I'm just telling you what I saw as a kid in the church I went to, okay? And in this wonderful, diverse church, I just did not see black men stand up and give testimony. I didn't see it. I didn't see that happen. And, when you're a kid, you see things, you don't always understand what you're seeing and hearing, but you're still taking it in. You're still soaking it up like a sponge, right? You're still like, I guess this is the way the world works. That's what's happening in your mind as you're watching this shit. And so as I'm this summer, like this year, 2024, replaying this in my mind, I mean, it slapped me like a damn ton of bricks. Like, holy fucking shit, man. Somehow in my little baby mind, my little kid mind, I interpreted, translated, and then embedded the belief that God blesses different people in different ways. White men get great jobs, cars, and houses. White women get good men. Black women get the fruits of the spirit, right? They get love, joy, peace, courage, strength, all that kind of stuff. A lot of long suffering. Apparently God gives black women a lot of long suffering. If you know, you know. And apparently God doesn't bless black men. That's just what I got. Okay. So, gosh, how did that play out in my life? Well, if you really want to know, yes, I've dated black men, just not a lot. Just not a lot. On my second marriage, white men. Duh. As a black woman, I am clear when it comes to spiritual strength. I mean, I'm a heavyweight champion. I'm like gangsta in these spiritual streets, okay? But I can't say that God has ever blessed me with a job or promotion to a 6-figure corner office. Now, I think it's possible, but not until I dealt with that belief that was embedded in my heart and mind as a child. You follow what I'm saying? My point is, the church is more responsible than perhaps they know for how me, you, them over there, that person right there, them people next door, how we think, what we perceive as possible for ourselves. I'm a spiritual juggernaut. Like, seriously, that's what they call me. I don't call myself that. That's what the angels call me. They call me a juggernaut, okay? And yet it took my guy saying, hey, you want to go to the next level in your manifestations? You should check out that church experience you had as a kid. It may or it may not have negatively influenced you. Turns out it did negatively influence me. Not overtly even. Because nobody said those words to me. Nobody said, oh, God does this. Nobody said that. That's just what I saw. There could have been plenty of black men in that congregation blessed by God. They just didn't get up on the stage. Really, that really could have happened. I was a part of a family. We went every Sunday every Wednesday, every program, every event. So I'm not saying I saw every testimony given, but I saw the vast majority of testimonies given in that church. Holy crap, over a 30-year span. Let's be fair, I was there for at least 30 years, okay? The man in front of me is a white man. I don't know, and he'll tell you in his own words whenever he feels like it or not, right? I don't know that he feels like God has blessed him with a promotion and a Lexus with the corner office and a golf membership at the country club. I don't know. But I'm gonna ask all of you to take an opportunity to look in your own life if you haven't started to already. You know, if you went to church, if you had any type of religious experience, I mean, has it positively or negatively influenced your experience of manifesting your desires? And look, I don't want a corporate job. I don't want a corner office. I had a Lexus. It's not really my thing. That's not the point. The point is when it's time to manifest what we really want, whether it's the relationship of our dreams, whether it's a family, like some of you just really want kids. You really want kids and you haven't been able to conceive, right? Some of you do want a job. You want a solid job that pays 6 figures because you've done the work, damn it, and you deserve the promotion. Some of you just want peace. Some of you have the job, you have the car, you actually have a good spouse, but you cannot kick yourself out of anxiety. You just cannot. You can't. You deal with insomnia and nothing you do gets you a good night's sleep. We all want something. We're all trying to manifest something, whether it's tangible or intangible. And whether we recognize it or not, our childhood has influenced our ability to manifest. It just has. For me, because I spent so much time in church, I experienced a lot of influence from church. So there's this particular lens that I view the world through. As I go through my own shadow work and I say, oof, look at that. I picked that up from church. I then turn that lens onto the external world around me and I go, oh, look what the church is doing to other people. Oh my gosh, look at that, look at that, look at that. And I'm left with this really, it's like the words that are coming to me is just pure heartbreak. I don't know if you've ever had a broken heart, you know, it actually hurts. It actually physically hurts. I'm left with this pure heartbreak that this institution that was meant to bring comfort to people does the opposite. And I say that like in the world like the one we live in today, comfort comes from letting go of the status quo. True comfort and peace comes from breaking away from tradition that says this lifestyle of working 60 hours a week and never being home with your family, it's actually not healthy. It's not healthy. Modern life is not healthy. And it takes a radical shift. It takes a radical paradigm shift to step out of what's acceptable, what's socially accepted. It takes courage. It takes being a rebel to walk away from the way we've always done things. And every day, if you look on the news, if you look in your neighborhood, it's time for us to walk away from the way we've always done things. The way we've always done things, it's not working for the kids in school. It's not working for our banking. Yeah, I'm trying to think of an area that it is working for, and I can't come up with one. I can't come up with an area where the status quo is doing us a favor. And one of the biggest players in keeping the status quo in place is the church. I mean, you guys know there never was a separation of church and state, right? That never happened. It never happened. That's why, any Sunday morning now, you can walk into any church and they might not have a sign in the front yard of the church. Listen, I live in rural East Bumfuck in the Ozarks, so maybe they do. Okay, but you only have to listen to the person in the pulpit speak for about 10-15 minutes to get that there's a political truth in that church that they're all adhering to. They're all praying for God's chosen representative to take the White House in November. I know a pastor that was there on January 6th, y'all. Like, really. I'm not gonna say the name of his church. I'm not gonna tell you what city it's in. I'm not gonna tell you his name. In Washington, at the Capitol on January 6th, a pastor. I just don't think it's appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate. I believe church, if there is going to be one, don't get me started on what I just said, but if there's going to be a church, I do believe it to be a place of neutrality where anyone can come and find peace and comfort. That might be what churches say they are. That is not what they are. And listen, if you somehow this falls into your lap and you're a pastor and you want to have a discourse with me, I would love that. Please, I would love for you to show me your congregation and how it is nothing like what I'm saying right now. I would love nothing more. Please feel free to invite me and show me all the ways in which your church is promoting peace and comfort and, actually upholding, Christ-like behavior throughout your congregation. Because you know what? I'd love to be there. I would love to be there with you. And that would be amazing. That would be great.
So on that note, to summarize my religious experiences in a sentence, God doesn't actually make your life better or great, even though that's what you're told to think. And so you pray and you pray and you pray and nothing gets better. That's not the way. What the church does want you to do is to be saved, be saved, be saved. And so eventually I got tired of that. And in college I stepped away for 15 years or so. And then I had an experience where I needed a community, and I had a close friend who's a pastor. And his church was small and they did things a little differently, so I got involved, but I very quickly found it was, it was the same kind of thing. After a while, they wanted to know that I got saved. I don't know that anybody ever bothered to find out that I had spent, 12 years at a Baptist school and 20 years in the Methodist Church every Sunday, and involved in the praise bands and the missions trips and all those things. And certainly nobody got curious as to why I might have ever left. What were you saying, though? I had to introduce myself before I went into my... Where did you just leave that off? Because I had a thought.
The idea that there might be a church out there actually practicing Christ-like behavior.
Yeah, and I think first you got to define Christ-like behavior. And, when you look at Christ, he did a whole lot of arguing, what does God really want for the world? What does it look like for God's presence to be manifest on earth? And he flipped some tables. He did that. So we got to question what was going on that he would be such an extreme presence in a church that way. He did some miracles. Mm. I don't see a lot of churches challenging the way that people are treating each other. I don't see a lot of churches concerning themselves solely with the spiritual and physical well-being of their congregations, let alone of their communities. But they exist. I know this because I've heard anecdotes. I heard one where you have this established church, and this is in the United States. I believe it's in the South somewhere, where religion really is a culture. And they hear that a mosque is being built nearby. No, actually, the mosque was being built next door. Their properties were going to be adjacent to one another. And through their involvement in the community, they learned that there were some substantial setbacks in the construction of the mosque that was going to impact these people's worship for a very important holiday. And so leaders in the church reached out to leaders for this mosque, and they say, hey, we would like to invite you all to use our facilities for your worship and celebration. I can't think of another example where I've ever heard of a Christian organization inviting an Islamic organization to use their facilities. But I think this is, in its perfect and beautiful way, what Jesus would have led in his own community. Far as we know, Jesus was he was Jewish. We don't have anything in the Bible that says he started a new religion. We have a single verse, as far as I can recall, that all of Christianity likes to hinge on, that no one comes to the Father but by me. And I find that the singulariness of that one verse to be, it gets me thinking, because there are some things that were repeated in all of the Gospels, which were essentially just a retelling of the same story. There were some things that were told in all of them, and there were some things that were only told once. And that's one of the ones that was only told once. And what does it mean, nobody comes to the Father except through me? Well, he also says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. The way, the truth, the life, the way, the pathway. So you follow this path. This is not necessarily religious. The truth, what is it that you believe in? You know, you don't have to believe in gravity for it to still impact you. And the life, and I think that's what Jesus illustrates in his life, is this is how you live, not where you go when you don't live anymore. And what we do see is he is willing to be challenged by people who were less than human culturally at the time. He was willing to be chastised. He was willing to be corrected. He was willing to challenge other people. But more than that, he always stood for humans. He always stood for that we loved each other. And so we talk about being Christ-like. We talk about what does this look like now? Well, I think it looks like a church reaching out to people of another faith and saying, your faith isn't our faith, but your faith is just as important to you as ours is to us. And you're another human being, and our leader taught us to love other human beings. And in our exploration of what it means to love somebody, we first and foremost understand each other just enough to begin recognizing where something is really important and seeing where we can be helpful. And then being open-hearted enough to ask questions and understand who you are and what matters to you and the way you live. And perhaps, likely, eventually find where we are the same. Where we love our children and our husbands and wives. Where we have dreams and aspirations to build a world that works the way we think it should. Where we love our friends and our families. Where we live in peace. Where we live in a community that is respectful of us and our families. Where we respect others and their families. We don't have to have the same religion to do those things. We don't have to have the same religion to know each other intimately. And, well.
It would be amazing.
It would be amazing. And to your point, this is very distinct from what we see where Christianity is dissenting. Where religion as a category, an institutional category, is just fighting with each other and the world and the way of things, rather than seeking unity and peace. It's not the way, it's become something different. And if it's not the way, then I'm looking elsewhere. and I say I'm looking elsewhere, but I think it's still there in all of the holy texts if you read with a discerning eye. I think Jesus had a lot of phenomenal things to teach the world, and he still does to people who read his story that way.
Yeah, I'm reminded of was in a church recently for a children's program, which was really great, and it was not a church service. It was a kids program, community program, really, and but still the pastor spoke a little bit before the program commenced, and he said something that struck me particularly. He said that God doesn't want us to trust ourselves. Now, that's what he said. I can't tell you if he meant it to come out that way, okay? What I can tell you is how it struck me. It struck me as very untrue. My heart and mind and soul immediately say, well, no, God definitely wants us to trust ourselves. No, I'm pretty sure God wants us to trust ourselves. So I'm not going to make up what he meant or what he intended to say. What I am going to point to is this. The pervasive culture and organized religion that dictates that one subverts their will, their trust, their mind, everything. And please be clear, modern religion isn't asking you to subvert your will, your peace, your trust to Jesus or to God. They're asking that you do so to the church. They're holding themselves out as a collective covering that if you will bring yourself to the church, right? I just heard, bring your tithes to the storehouse. If you'll bring your whatever, fill in the blank, to the church, they will act as proxy for God. And on God's behalf, will mete out their version of God's judgment for whatever it is that you want or need, okay? Nothing could be further from the truth. The whole point of Jesus, and I was reminded of this when you were sharing, Clay, the whole point of Jesus was so that humans could have a personal, direct relationship with God. That was Jesus' whole game. He's, I'm going to put y'all on game. Kingdom of heaven is at hand. I came from the Father. You look, are you? And he literally said, "Are ye not gods?" Words of Jesus. Are ye not gods? Why, yes, we are gods. Ye are gods. Yes, we are. That's what I want to leave you with from this conversation. Jesus himself asked the question, "Are ye not gods?" And the answer is yes, we are. The modern religious collectively would have you deny that truth. It would have you make yourself less than dirt, so that through them you can be brought up again into the love of Jesus, into the love of God. Baby, you don't need a church for that. You don't need another man for that. You at home alone, you and you and you and you and you, just all of you, you can go inside, because each one of us has that divine spark inside of us, or we wouldn't be here, we wouldn't be alive, okay? You can go inside and you can reach that divinity inside. You can touch the part of you that is infinitely and eternally connected to Source, God, Creator, inside. It is pure, it is pristine, it is unerring. I'm hearing that is the incorruptible seed, okay? That is the incorruptible seed. That is what your faith is founded on. Your faith, if you're a person of faith, it's not founded on the church. It's not founded on something the pastor said. If you are an actual, genuine person of faith, it is founded on an incorruptible seed that lies within your soul. That was there when you were born. It'll be, boom. When you die, it'll go right back to God, okay? That's what I want you left with. And my charge for this whole conversation is, it is judgment day out here in these streets. And I personally believe that the church should be first in line. The intentional disconnection of people from their divinity. The subversion of the people's will and intuition to serve the organization rather than humanity itself. It is, Spirit is throwing all these words. Sacrilege, blasphemous, the ultimate sin. Like, Spirit is not having this. Not having this. Okay? We're gonna stop the conversation here, because I feel like we could keep going, and we will come back to this conversation over and over and over again, because it's such an important one. You know, today we brought up Christianity and Islam. I was raised Judeo-Christian. We talked about, Jesus being a Jew. There's so many different facets of this conversation, and over time we're going to get at as many as we can. I'm multi-ethnic, so my life reaches out and touches many aspects. And maybe yours does too. Over the course of my life, I've made friends with so many people from all over the world who believe so many different things, and it's impacted my worldview, and maybe you have too. But what we want you left with out of this conversation is, are ye not gods? Yes. Yes, you are.